2 of this life renovation course called Stress Busters, and it really is our hope that you get a lot out of this course on how to manage that tension that exists between pressure and stress. And so we're spending a bit of time on that just to recap, where we left off last time. We looked at the truth that you can't eliminate stress, but you can manage it, and that's what we hear a lot about these days, stress management. But it may have surprised you last time to learn that there is a positive side to stress as well, and we looked at eustress, the positive side of stress, how this can cause us to grow and cause us to actually fulfill our potential as human beings, which can be a great thing. The being stretched part of it can be stressful, but it's part of a growth process, and if something's part of a growth process that takes us forward, then obviously that's a good thing. And so eustress can be that powerful tool that helps us move forward and accomplish things in our life. And then of course we looked at distress, which is what we hear a lot about, the negative side of stress, and how if stress causes strain that we begin to suffer. And we looked at Dr. John Tickell and his ideas about this, where he talked about stress being an internal phenomenon. He says what's out there is called pressure. In his book 10 Secrets of Long Living People, he makes these statements that stress is an internal phenomenon. It's not something that's external. What's out there, what's external to us, is pressure. And we've got to handle the tension between pressure and stress, because at some point that pressure can become stress. He also talked about the idea of how we can put 10 people under the same pressure and get varying responses, because for one person it might cause them to grow and excel and become all that they can be. It might cause chronic stress in somebody else, and so we've got to make sure that we try and find the balance in those two things. But he says that the same pressure and the different response all comes down to one thing and one thing only. He says because the individual chooses. And so we can choose which way we want to go. We can choose whether this pressure that we're under is going to become stress or not. And today we're going to be looking at how people carry stress, because it's not so much how much stress we may be under or how much pressure we're under, but it's what we do with that pressure and how we carry the stresses and the pressure that we're under. And I've created what I call 6 types of stress carriers, and they're based on birds. And you may identify with one of these birds, or maybe at different times you may identify with all of them. But I just think it's a fun way of looking at the idea, and of course you're going to be having some conversation with a facilitator after this, and to talk about it a bit more. Well, the first type of carrier, the first bird, is the turkey. I call the turkey people the verbalizers. I don't know if you've ever been around turkeys, but I grew up, my grandparents had turkeys, and so quite often she would say, "You got a problem, go tell it to the turkeys." And so I would go up there, and turkeys are just they're just always verbalizing. They're just and so and this is how some people handle pressure. It's a way that it maybe it's already turned into stress, or maybe it's on its way to turning its way into stress, but this is the way they handle it. They verbalize it. They constantly verbalize in a high-strung manner and release their stress. And everyone around them feels kind of pretty stressed out because they're verbalizing it. Well, the second type of bird is the duck. I call these people the pretenders. The duck, if you've ever seen ducks, they look quite peaceful, quite on the surface, smooth sailing, but paddling like crazy underneath if they're going to get anywhere. So they appear cool and calm and collective, but underneath it all they're stressing out. Last time I shared the story about the 4-wheel driving experience and my wife's experiential association. Part of that 4-wheel driving experience was driving along a beach. We couldn't find this place called Wedge Island, so I thought, well, we'll just pop out onto the beach. We'll follow the beach all the way down, and eventually we'll collide with Wedge Island. It's a well-known spot up there, and there's even people that live there, kind of in the sand dunes, and go fishing there. It's a popular fishing place. And so part of my experience was when we popped out onto the beach. We were in a $60,000 vehicle. I didn't own the vehicle, we just leased them. And I'm driving along the beach and enjoying this four-wheel driving experience, but then realising we seem to be getting closer and closer to the water here, and the beach got thinner and thinner, and it got to a certain point where on the left-hand side of the vehicle was a drop of about 6 to 8 feet with waves crashing. And we're driving along and kind of wedged in between sand dunes and the edge of this beach, and I can feel the front wheel dropping off the edge, and then the back wheel gripping, and the back wheel dropping off, and the front wheel gripping, and I'm pushing into the dunes as much as I can. And of course, my wife wasn't having a good experience that day, and she kind of, screeched, and but me, I was the duck. I was just sitting there, and on the surface, I was just smooth sailing, like it's a Sunday drive. But the reality was, underneath the surface, I was paddling like crazy. I'm going, I don't even know if I'm insured. Are we insured? If we fall off the edge of this thing, we're just going to go flat, straight in the water. And then the car will fill up with water. We'll have waves crashing over the top of it. But, on the top, on the surface, just the duck, mate, just smooth sailing. And some people, they're like that. They're the pretenders. They just, they think, they come across like nothing's getting to them. But really, under the surface, it's all just brewing away. It can be dangerous. They're the kind of people that can explode. But, that's for another day. Third kind of bird I want to look at is the seagull. And the seagull is an aggressor. And they just, they're quite an aggressive kind of bird. And some people, that's how they deal with pressure and stress. They just get really aggressive. And I know at times I can be like this. And that stressing out can bring out anger and or aggressive behaviours. Some people, all they want to do is kick the dog. It's a well-known saying here in Australia and around the globe. They just brings out aggression in them. They get snappy and angry and not happy. I don't know if you've ever seen a seagull when you're in a beach scenario. Here in Australia, we're surrounded by beaches, some of the nicest beaches in the world, and we often have to put up with the seagulls that are around the place. And if you've ever seen a seagull around some people with some food, especially it's well documented that here in Australia we eat fish and chips or at least chips down at the beach or down in a park, and we'll be surrounded by seagulls. And seagulls are kind of are really aggressive. They're like, give me a flippin' chip! And so they're quite aggressive in nature in the way they do things. On the other hand, we've got the fourth kind of bird, the pigeon. Now the pigeons, they're carriers. They tend to carry things, and they kind of have this laid-back, take it in their stride kind of vibe going on. And I don't know if you've seen this, but in our experience here in Australia, you can be surrounded by seagulls, but they somehow manage to get their way. You'll see seagulls getting really aggressive and doing their thing, and then a pigeon will kind of cruise into the middle of it, and they'll kind of go, hey, give us a flip and chip, mate. Hey, come on, chuck us a flip, chuck us a chip. And they seem to thrive in stressful situations. I don't know if you're that kind of bird. I know that at times stress brings out the best in me, but I know at other times it can bring out the beast in me. And I can see myself in both of these birds at different times, either the pigeon or the seagull. Fifth kind of bird that I want to look at is the crow. The crow, they're what I would call sharers or scavengers. They deal with their own stress by feeding on the misfortunes of others. They infect others with their negativity, cynicism, doubts and fears. They're only happy when they're sharing their stress and bringing other people down to the level of their own experience. They don't care about or are completely oblivious to the consequences of their actions. They feel a sense of self-justification because they just want to make sure that they get their stress out. But they're feeding off of the misfortunes of other people. And it's unfortunate, but some people, that's how they do deal with stress. And it is a worry that can be the case. Well, the sixth kind of bird and the final bird that we're going to look at is the ostrich. I call these people the ignorers. They deal with their stress situations by sticking their head in the sand. They hope that when they re-emerge, it would somehow have magically disappeared. That stress is gone now. Whatever the problem is, it's gone. They possess hope, but it's nebulous. Their hope is in nothing. Their hope is in nothing but whatever. We'll see what happens, and they just ignore it and hope it goes away. And they're well known for just sweeping things under the carpet and never dealing with things. But whether you can identify with the turkey, the duck, the seagull, the pigeon, the crow, or the ostrich, or maybe you can identify with all of them at different times in your life, in different situations. I think it'll be fun right now for you. That concludes this part 2. It'd be fun for you guys to now, with your facilitator, sit down and maybe share some stories and continue on this narrative, looking at these different ways of carrying stress. And maybe you've got some stories to tell, and maybe you can be part of the narrative today and create some conversation around this idea of the way we carry our stress, the way we carry pressure, and what kind of birds we identify with, and maybe at different times. So enjoy your time together, and we'll see you again next time for part 3.